Good evening from London, wrestling fans. I'm your host, Ben Allison, and you are listening to Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast, your one-stop shop for professional wrestling insight, news, and reviews on a daily basis. I'm back in London, as you could hear from the introduction. I'm back here now studying for the year and talking about people who've just moved to where they're studying for the year. Let me introduce the first panelist for today, David Sheldon. How are you, David, and how is moving back to London been for you?
Wrestling Republic Daily Broadcast, take 24. Hello, everybody. Very excited to be here. Sorry for the reference. It was too funny not to. Such a silly nonsense on Collision. Hello, everybody. Very excited to be here chatting AEW Collision this week. I am, of course, in London. I am back here. I moved in about an hour and a half ago. I had a 5.5-hour bus ride that was supposed to be about 3 hours, thanks to all the road closures and driver breaks, and just, I hate it. I hate it so much. But I'm here now, and here excited to talk about Collision. Quite a bit to talk about, so I'm excited. Let's get at it.
Absolutely. And yeah, part of the M4, I don't know if it was still the same today, part of the M4, which is like one of the biggest roads to get from Wales to London, was shut yesterday when I got here as well. So it was complete
several different points. The M4 was shut. So it was
just absolute chaos. It was dreadful. It really,
chaos.
really
Where's chaos? Where's chaos? I heard chaos.
But talking right. Well, anyway, shout out to David, because David's the Impact sub today. He's filled in. Thank you so much to David. But talking about shout outs, we've got to give a shout out to the man who's done every show this weekend. He's on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and today. Shad. How are things, Shad?
The weekend of Shad is coming to an end, but we're here on Sunday, man. I don't normally get on Sunday shows, so it's kind of cool talking about AEW Collision. Some cool stuff happened. Yeah, man, I'm excited for the show. I'm tired from this week, but it's been good. Let's not forget Tuesday night NXT review.
Absolutely. NXT off. So wrestling off the air immediately following NXT, the NXT post show. And we've got a Let's Go Shardy comment in the chat as well as Bobby Batito. Shout out to you, Bobby. Thank you for joining us. And today we're going to be talking about Collision. We're going to be breaking down what we liked, what we didn't like. And I'm going to start off with something which I didn't like, or more so, I don't think is good for AEW, right? And I was watching last night's AEW Collision, and to, a wrestling fan, a hardcore wrestling fan, last night's episode had a lot of good stuff on it, right? But to a casual wrestling fan, a lot didn't make sense. It really didn't. You can tell from the crowd, they went silent at times. And it was so obvious when the Workhorsemen came out, right? And they got in the ring with FTR. They obviously expected, the crowd to go nuts. They started a "Who are you" chant. Then later on, when the Righteous were cutting a promo, the same chant started again. It gets to a point where are AEW presuming fans watch all their shows, all their content each and every week, because you have 2 hours of Dynamite, 2 hours of Collision, an hour of Rampage, an hour of Ring of Honor. Do you really expect fans to keep up with all of that television? It's like 7 hours of television per week. And that's a lot as it is. Never mind the fact that most of the AEW audience watch other wrestling companies as well, whether that's WWE, Impact Wrestling, New Japan, whatever. There's a lot of wrestling. There's a lot of content. And a lot of people criticize WWE for the amount of promo packages they do, the amount of promo packages they do on Raw and SmackDown explaining something that happened on Monday night. People go, well, why are they doing this? We saw it on Monday night. Well, the reason they're doing it again is that a lot of the SmackDown audience don't watch Raw, and a lot of the Raw audience don't watch SmackDown. So if WWE, which is a bigger company with a larger audience than AEW, believes that, they need to do recaps on both shows, then, well, AEW probably need to do more recaps and explain who characters are. They need to build these characters on Dynamite and Collision, especially Dynamite. That's the A show, right? If they're not being built up on Dynamite and Collision, you've got to presume they don't know them. Not enough people are watching Rampage. Not enough people are watching Ring of Honor. And listen, we've been talking about, poor ticket sales for AEW this week. Well, maybe a factor which we haven't even spoken about is this. But I'm going to pass this firstly to you, Shad. What do you think? Do you think that this is an issue, or do you think that even if you're a casual fan, you can still get enjoyment out of it?
I mean, in some facets, it is an issue because it doesn't make it easier for the talent when you put them on a different show. And I mean, to me, the major thing is the difference between the rosters of what is given on weekly television of Ring of Honor to what is given on like a Dynamite or a Collision. And I think that's where the key problem was yesterday. Like, we as fans, unless you watch every weekly television show and unless you're a member of the Honor Club or a Ring of Honor fan, you're not in tune to who the Righteous are. And them having a match last night and getting a victory over the Hardy Boys kind of leaves the crowd confused because they don't know them. And then they beat a fan favorite within the Hardy Boys. So I think it is a problem. And I mean, we see the same issue happen on WWE too, where you have roster members from NXT, come up to the main roster. You don't get that same reaction. You don't, as much as we love a Johnny Gargano, a Candice LeRae, a Karrion Kross, whoever it may be, they don't get a Bronson Reed too. You don't get that immediate reaction because people don't watch the Tuesday night show. I think AEW is starting to kind of see the similar issues coming in yesterday with people on Collision. I'm not Collision. I'm sorry, on Ring of Honor and then Rampage, because Rampage, nobody really watches it like that. It's got a pretty awkward time slot, and it's kind of the dark show just for television. They don't put any marquee matches, and then you see people like the Workhorsemen and other wrestlers on that. And then the same goes for Ring of Honor. It's on the paywall. Nobody catches the show unless you're paying for it. So it is going to make it hard for them. If you are going to present them on a Collision or a Dynamite, you do have to do the due diligence and kind of getting the fans inclined to them, like you mentioned, with promo packages or whatever it may be, a backstage segment. You have to have them visibly seen before you throw them out there in front of all the fans in matches, because it's going to do a disservice for them. And now the big issue is this. The fact that we saw him last night and the crowd was instantly chanting, "Who are you?" This is going to happen every week. Like, they kind of are stuck in the mud now. Like, it's going to be they're fighting themselves out of a deep hole now with the Righteous and the Workhorsemen. And it's not, necessarily fair to them. I think both teams are solid wrestlers. I think they are pretty good characters as well, but they're, they're stuck in the mud, and it's not going to be easy for them to get out of it.
Absolutely. No, I mean, you made a great point there, Shard. And I mean, you just mentioned right there that if they, crowds keep doing this now, week in, week out, they start those, those chants, "Who are you?" I mean, I guess they could take it, use it to their advantage. And I mean, especially the Workhorsemen, I feel like they could kind of involve that in their gimmicks slightly and be like, "You should know who we are." But I mean, for the Righteous, it doesn't fit. But there were less chance for them. It was really the Workhorsemen where the entire crowd was just, it was brutal. But I if they're smart and if crowds do this every week, then they can, they can use this. But the issue is AEW can't keep repeating this, right? Because they need to build talent, right? They can't just keep showcasing random talent. I'm sorry, they can't, right? I'm a huge fan of both the Workhorsemen, right? But you need to explain to fans. You can't just chuck two random people in there and expect it to be a big deal. It doesn't work like that anymore. We saw it in the early days when the Dark Order debuted, right? And it didn't work then, and it doesn't work now. Obviously, the Dark Order ended up getting over, but that was months and months down the line, and that was in part thanks to, but both Brody Lee and, of course, also being the Elite. Those are the two big factors there. But, David, do you think that maybe I'm being a bit too harsh on them, or do you think that AEW really do need to explain to casual fans, the casual audience, more about these guys?
I think it's a difficult one because there's loads of factors to this. I don't think this is a simple issue, although there are perhaps fairly straightforward fixes in certain regards. I'll deal with both separately. It's funny because if you look at the Workhorsemen first, the Workhorsemen have been on AEW programming before. They were quite big, kind of. They were a prominent presence on the lower card shows for quite a while before Ring of Honor, where they kind of moved over there. Unfortunately, they weren't big enough presences. So when you come out to confront FTR, you're not going to kind of, at least Iron Savages were on the show 2-3 weeks ago and have had a couple of matches to at least people have seen them. Well, I mean, the Workhorsemen have been missing in action for ages. They were never big enough stars for anybody to really miss them. And I like the Workhorsemen. Please don't take it that I don't. But, them being too far away and then brought back, no one remembers them, so that you get a who are you chant. The Righteous was a real shame because I love the Righteous. I'm a huge fan of the Righteous. It pained me that this was by quite a way the lowest thing I rated on this show when I did my review. The problem you had with this is that the Righteous are great characters. If you bring them out against the Hardys in quite a boring nothing match, the crowd just switch off. They just switch off. You had to have vignettes. The Righteous would work so well with a couple of weeks of vignettes. If the main roster audience ever saw of the Wyatt family was them attacking Kane, that character would never have gotten over because people would not have known what was going on. But because you had the weeks of build-up of the Man in the Woods, even people that hadn't seen the NXT program, I thought, oh, these guys are quite cool and creepy and interesting, and the We're Coming and stuff like that. You can do vignettes for a couple of weeks before you bring the Righteous to TV, because this was clearly an effort to get the Righteous over, as they should, because the Righteous are awesome. And I wrote in my review, I literally had prompts written for how much I love the Righteous, and then the match was so boring I kind of had to rescind some of them, and that's a real shame. Because they're such fantastic characters, but when you get them in a nothing match and then the promo kind of died because the crowd were bored, and it's a real shame. As for the issue of whether AEW fans are presuming, AEW are presuming fans watch all the shows, they do. This is an issue that they have across the board. I do think WWE sometimes have the same issue, as Shad mentioned, with NXT talent. They seem to have worked it out by now, and I think AEW haven't quite yet. I will say I think Rampage is always a double-edged sword with AEW, because if they book the cards to be episodes of Dark with a bunch of nothing matches, people complain and say, where are the big matches on Dynamite? So on Rampage. And then they book big matches on Rampage and everybody goes, well, why aren't they on Dynamite? So they're caught in a catch-22 where they can't really win on that front. What they can do is build stories on Rampage to make you want to tune into Rampage. For all Ring of Honor's done, and I've been a fan of the Ring of Honor programming, they've finally worked it out now with the Billy Starks and Athena story over on Ring of Honor, which is a weekly progressing storyline, same with the Righteous and Dark Order, that makes people want to tune in and watch. Whether they are tuning in is a different question, but it's giving people a reason to. Rampage is a series of good matches every week. And that's not enough, no matter how high profile those matches are. So I certainly think that it is quite a difficult question, but the answer really is just look at your talent. Think, this is the person we have. What is the best way to get these people over to an audience? In an Action Andretti case, it's throw them in the deep end. In a Righteous case, I think it would have been more vignettes. And I think you have to take everybody on an individual case-by-case basis. But I do think we showed tonight that trying to bring a bunch of Ring of Honor people to Collision without adequate care is a shame. Because you can bring people from Ring of Honor, you can make them massive stars on television. You've just got to know how to book them properly.
Brilliant point there, David. Really, really brilliant point. I mean, to be honest with you, I really don't know. You said about, what the solution is for Rampage. I don't know. You said double-edged sword, and I agree with it. I mean, it comes right to the question, is there enough demand, to be honest with you? Is there enough demand for a third AEW show, which is an hour each week? I don't know.
No.
The time slot, the day, and just the short amount of the episode, their backs are against the wall with Rampage. Where I agree with David's point. It is a double-edged sword because you don't it's kind of like when you're one of the top people, you kind of like, okay, I don't know if I want to be in it. And there's also the other fact of this. You gotta, like I mentioned on was it Thursday or Wednesday? Um it's they're taping Rampage after the Dynamite is done. Like,
Yeah.
and that's late. That's at like 11 o'clock on Wednesday night. The crowd, you can notice the crowd is dead. So
Yeah. Rampage would be a lot more tolerable, I think, if it was a YouTube show, like Dark was. But maybe
that.
but the problem is they've got TV deals. Because the thing is, AEW have a developmental currently, and it's sadly called Ring of Honor. That's where they're building a lot of their names down in Ring of Honor to bring them to AEW. Unfortunately, you have to bring them with care. There's something WWE learned the hard way by bringing up the Ascension and giving them nothing to do, and bringing up Vaudevillains and giving them nothing to do. And so many of them have just fallen by the wayside, and they've kind of worked it out now. They've just got to try and find a way to figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's just be careful. Just assume the audience know nothing. Don't insult their intelligence, but assume they know less than you think they do. I think sometimes is the way to kind of look at it.
I still don't know what happened with the Vaudevillains, to be honest with you, because they really were great, and I actually thought they were better on the main roster in regards of they were getting over, but like you said, they gave them nothing, and it turned into a complete and utter failure, and unfortunately, nothing came from it. But it's not just us three today. No, because we have a fourth joining us, and that fourth man is named Bret Sternberg. How are you today, Bret?
How's everyone doing? Hope everyone's having a great Sunday, and I am ready to lean in. Let's go.
Absolutely, and in just a little bit, me and Bret are going to have a discussion about the previous take of his. But before we do that, let's get back into AEW Collision, and let's talk about Ricky Starks teaming up with Big Bill to face the BCC, Danielson, Bryan Danielson, and Claudio Castagnoli. First things first. I don't know if maybe I'm the last to realize this, but I realized last night, right, when these guys were wrestling, that Big Bill and Ricky Starks, their tag team name is Billy Starks. So there we are then. But yeah, David's shaking his head. He cannot believe it. But I realized yesterday, I'm like, you got Big Bill and Ricky Starks together. And then you have another women's wrestler called Billy Starks in your roster. It is slightly confusing. But no, jokes aside. This match was a fun opener to Collision, right? It wasn't anything like too special, but it was a good opener. It was a match which the fans, they cared about, not overly cared about, but they've done a good job of building up Ricky Starks and Big Bill over the last few weeks. Danielson, Claudio, you can't go wrong with them, really, can you? It was a fine match. Needed to happen. It was about the only match on the show, which, to be honest with you, I thought made any sense from a casual's point of view. But it was a good opener to the show. But Shad, give me your take on, this tag team opener.
yeah, I mean, I like the match within itself. I thought I said it last time. I like the pairing of Big Bill and Ricky Starks. I always thought Ricky Starks as a heel has all the charisma, and him having like a heavy previously with Powerhouse Hobbs, and now you put in Big Bill in this situation. It meshes well together, and it works itself out so strongly. So I think them as a tag team pairing is good. I thought it was a good bout. I mean, you're always going to have great matches with Danielson and Claudio tied to it as well. And I think the most important portion of it is just the progression of this storyline and within this feud with Ricky Starks and Danielson, as well as the BCC. And I'm curious to kind of see where it is, because obviously Starks was able to get the dub last night. We're going back into a match with him and Danielson, I believe, next week on Collision, which is a Texas death match. And I'm curious to see who's going to win it this time around, because I really think that Ricky Starks should probably get this victory this go around, because as much as I love Danielson and of course how incredible he is, I think it's time to continue to build up Ricky Starks as a main stage guy on your entire roster on AEW, and then him just being like one of the premier guys on Collision. I mean, Collision, you got guys like him, You got Jay White, who did, we'll probably talk about it later, did great work yesterday. But Ricky Starks really has that star character and impact where I feel a victory over Danielson this go around will be beneficial. And I'm hoping that we get it led to him and Moxley eventually having a feud and him getting a title match for the international title. So, but I mean, that's neither here or there. That's to be determined. In regards to yesterday, I think it was a solid tag match. And kudos to Big Bill again, man. Like, I think they finally found a good place for him as a character on this AEW roster. I mean, they had him in that makeshift tag team with Lee Moriarty, who I believe was just visible yesterday for the first time, if I'm not mistaken, right? Was he on the
Yes,
show?
he's aligned himself with Shane Taylor Promotions now as well.
Yeah, I was really excited about that. But I mean, they put themselves in a good place with my man Big Bill. I think he's showing that like potential that we saw him have all these years, even prior to him on NXT and WWE, man. This guy moves well for a big guy. He's got a powerful look to him. He's got charisma now. Like the charisma with him is showing so well. And I'm super excited for him. I'm glad that TK is putting him in strong booking on this. And man, I just like the pairing a lot. I really want to see these two guys continue to flourish. And I mean, hey man, maybe get a tag team title at some point.
Oh, I would not mind that whatsoever. Of course, Ricky Starks versus Danielson next week, Texas Death Match. You mentioned it. I'm very excited for it. Something I was thinking about yesterday when they did that Zack Sabre Jr. promo on Collision was that they've not really explained Zack Sabre Jr. versus Danielson to people who don't know who Zack Sabre Jr. really are yet. Now, admittedly, he's enough of a name, I think, where you can sell that match to hardcore fans who are usually the ones who are going to buy the pay-per-views anyway. So I don't have as much of an issue with that compared to some random matches announced on TV. But even still, you kind of want to add a bit of story to it. So maybe Zack Sabre Jr., screws over Danielson next week, and that means that Starks gets the victory. And that's how they advance the feud there. But we got a comment here from Bailey saying, who agrees with you, Shad. He thinks that Ricky Starks deserves the win. And we've also got Dynasty. Welcome, Dynasty, to the chat and to the show. But without further ado, right, we're gonna go off Collision for just a moment, because if you guys watch Mailbag Monday every Monday, where we answer your questions that you guys have submitted via our Instagram stories, then you will know that a few weeks ago we got asked the question of who should dethrone Roman Reigns, and Bret gave the answer of The Rock. He said The Rock should win the Rumble and then beat Reigns. Now, I never disputed any of this, right? I the only part which I did dispute is The Rock winning. I absolutely not for a second think that should happen. I really, really do think it should be Reigns versus Rock. I think that's the money match. I wouldn't mind if The Rock won the Rumble. I'd prefer it if he didn't, but I wouldn't mind it, right? I think there's other ways you can go about it. But regardless, I don't dispute that claim from you, Bret, whatsoever. But I know, Bret, you want to talk about this subject and you want to tell me why you think that I'm wrong. So why should Rock be the one to defeat Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40? You muted yourself, Bret.
So it only makes sense. It only makes sense at this point, to be honest with you. And I was muted because I was rumbling up. I was getting all the juices flowing, so that's why I had to be quiet for a second. But anyway, I called it that The Rock was going to come back. I didn't know that it was going to be this soon, to be completely honest with you. I thought his first appearance might have been at Royal Rumble to take that home and then go ahead and face Roman. But it looks like they're trying to build a longer-term story with The Rock, and I think he's going to be a more fixated figure in WWE until WrestleMania, just to build this up. I do think that The Rock will win Royal Rumble. It might be the final two, might be Cody Rhodes and The Rock. It might be Jay, Cody, and then The Rock. But I do think that The Rock will take that home for the people in Tampa especially it being in Tampa. I think that's like The Rock's like second home in a sense, because it's Florida. He went to Miami, everything like that. He's gonna have the crowd is gonna be with him. Everyone that place will literally erupt. The Thunderdome,
Yeah, that's true.
Thunderdome. That place will erupt if he wins. Even comes out as an entrant, they will erupt. And I'm telling you, TKO or WWE is not looking at this and saying, okay, we are not going to capitalize on it. So they're going to capitalize, in my opinion, at Royal Rumble. And I do think that match, they don't need to, because The Rock is The Rock. He can call out Roman Reigns and have a match whenever he wants. But I also don't think that whoever wins the Royal Rumble is going to face Seth Rollins, in my opinion, because I think that match can be built up over a storyline, because Seth Rollins has that much star power. But I do believe that The Rock will take Royal Rumble. And then I said this before, I'm going to stand on my hill by myself. I think that The Rock is going to beat Roman Reigns because it will make Roman look stronger in time. If the Roman goes ahead and beats Rock at SummerSlam after he takes this, how is that not benefiting Roman?
But I don't know. I mean, my big issue, right, Bret, with what you're saying is kind of what Bailey is saying here. Saying that, surely Roman would be his retirement match for The Rock.
Yes.
Yes. You're saying basically they do it 1 year and then they run it back the next, and Roman. So you're saying the Cena storyline again, basically.
I think that The Rock. I think that this is a 1 year thing. I don't think this is a 2 year thing. I think that The Rock is in this company until Mania or until SummerSlam, and that's it.
Oh, okay. So do the first one at Mania then. Yeah, go for it, David.
So I'd just like to say, if The Rock is the person to end Roman Reigns' 3-year run with this championship, you won't get the calm, happy David on the Wrestling Republic Daily broadcast. You will get the angry, seething, completely fed up with this company thing, because unfortunately what it reminds me of, and this is possibly unfair, but it reminds me of Hulk Hogan going over Yokozuna at Mania 9, because I'll drop the title later in the year. It's the moment of giving Hogan the yay, while the established star that they're trying to build, or the two new stars they're trying to build, lie on the floor. And in this analogy, Hulk Hogan is The Rock, Yokozuna is Roman Reigns, and Bret Hart is Cody Rhodes.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people feel bad for Cody Rhodes after The Rock returned, because everyone thought that Cody, Roman, Mania 40, that will be the rematch. Here's the thing, right? Like I just said, I agree with you, David. No way should The Rock win a Mania. No way, right? It should just be a match to draw in a lot of fans. And I think at the SummerSlam after it, Cody should win the belt. Of course, not Roman Reigns. The Rock said in his press conference in the interview with Pat McAfee that he did, that if he does this match against Reigns, he wants it to be a story which continues after he's left. So I really am thinking more and more now that it's going to be Solo Sikoa who actually beats Roman, but I think it should be Cody.
I tell you who I think should be Roman is Cody approximately 5 months ago. And that's all I'll say. And my mind has not been changed on that, and it won't be changed on that, I don't think. Unless they pull a real rabbit out of the hat.
Everybody's saying, and absolutely everybody online is saying this over and over and over again, that the match doesn't need a title. Everybody's saying Roman Reigns, The Rock, it doesn't need a title, and everybody is absolutely correct. But with a title, one second, with a title, it'll earn a lot more money. It'll look a lot better on billboards, seeing that championship in play. I think
The Rock's first match The Rock's first match in a decade, I think, is big enough.
It is, but outside fans, a title looks like, okay, this is the world championship fight. These are the two best guys. As hardcore fans, The Rock's obviously a household name, like you said, absolutely. But just for really, really, really casual fans, right? And I'm not on about the casual fans we talk about when we're talking AEW. I'm talking about people who haven't watched WWE for 20 years. They see The Rock on a billboard facing somebody with a golden championship. They think, well, hang on a second, The Rock's back.
If we're trying to appeal to the hardest of hardcore fans, we'd have Donald Trump versus Joe Biden as the main event of WrestleMania. That's not going to happen.
If they could do that, they would. They would if they could.
No, they shouldn't though. That's the difference.
He shouldn't.
You know what I
The
mean?
title-
Just because you
the-
can doesn't mean you should.
I don't want to see an old man die in the ring or both old men die in the ring.
I've watched Rick,
I'm not that
Flair
heinous
nearly
of
do
a
it several
person.
times. I don't need to see it happen to anybody else.
The title of that match is going to be who is the real tribal chief.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to be.
Joe
And
Biden
I,
versus
absolutely.
Donald Trump for the position of tribal chief. Get the wreaths
I,
out.
I believe that The Rock has always been the real tribal chief. He's never claimed that. He's never claimed that glory. So when he comes in, that's going to be what the story's about, in my opinion. So
I really wish in that promo he had with Austin Theory, and he just dropped a little line in there, like something like, no, none of these people here are going to acknowledge you, or something like that, or saying, how dare, or just something maybe even like that, you know, when he was talking about, you know, saying that it's his show, not the people's, and then The Rock came out, The Rock should say, you know, you're at our table, or something like that, with just a little reference to one of Roman's catchphrases, and then that could get Roman, you know, thinking to himself, and then maybe in a few weeks, some Roman throws in a reference, and that just starts it. I was a little disappointed that all we got was the camera cutting to Jimmy Uso after The Rock. That was really the only reference. And is that deliberate? Is that not deliberate? Who knows? Like, it was so small. We could debate that for ages.
I do feel that they're going to be friends for a while leading up to this rivalry, though. I think that The Rock is going to embrace them as his family. They're going to embrace him as their family. And then Roman's going to overstep his boundaries, and that's how it's going to start.
Do you think Rock's back? Do you think he's going to be back?
I think no. I think he's a part-timer right now. I think it's almost like a Brock Lesnar type of situation. It's like, oh, bring Rock
That's
out.
even more than I thought.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's invested. I think TKO put money into the I think that they're going all out right now. They have The Rock where he's at this age. Is not going to get any younger. You know what I mean? So like, do it now.
Fair enough. I mean, that's a good point. But I'm going to be honest, I don't think he's going to be around that much. I think if he does come back, it will be the Rumble next time we see him. But I do hope you're right, because it would be nice to, you know, see him show up here and there. And he's very good friends with Nick Khan. He was childhood friends with Nick Khan. He's close with Vince. He's close with Dana White, although that he'll have much to do with it. But more notably, he's very close with Ari Emanuel, the owner of Endeavor, right? So, The Rock, TKO, it's a match made in heaven. But now let's continue talking about matches made in heaven, and let's go on to Andrade and Jay White. Well, last night, Andrade versus Scorpio Sky, but leading into Andrade versus Jay White in a few weeks' time, because Scorpio Sky last night had his second match in 14 months, because obviously he's been suffering injuries a lot lately. I really wish they did a proper return angle for him here, right? Not just him coming in a random match against Andrade with no real build and just not squash him. It was a very fun match, but he lost. They shook hands afterwards. There was great sign of respect, fun match. I'm not complaining about the match itself, but Scorpio Sky kind of deserved better. But again, I'm not going to complain, because it's nice to see Andrade on TV. Afterwards, and this is the bit that I liked, Bullet Club Gold came out, cut another one. Jay White specifically cut another one of his great promos. And it seems like Andrade versus Jay White is the direction. Not only does it seem like it, that is the direction they're going in. Andrade, Jay White, take my money, please, Tony Khan. But David, give me your thoughts on this one.
First of all, I just want to call out AEW on some incorrect numbers, because the exact thing, unless I'm mistaken, because the thing that you said there, Ben, this was his second match in 14 months, Scorpio Sky. I believe it's his third. They said second on commentary, but he faced Action Andretti on Collision. Then he was I swear he was in the Battle Royal. And that was his return, because I remember going, oh, it's Scorpio Sky. Hello, Scorpio. And then he got eliminated fairly quickly. And now this match.
I believe you're right. Maybe they meant second singles match?
It's a second singles match. But that was an incorrect call by commentary, because they said second match in 14 months, and it wasn't. It goes to show even they've forgotten about that pre-show Battle Royal. But yeah, it was a good match. Really good match, actually, with these two guys. You'd expect nothing less. They're two great wrestlers. Andrade is brilliant. I'm more excited for the post matches. I think we all are. Jay White versus Andrade. I like they've put it on Collision next week. I thought it was going to be a Wrestle Dream match. I'll be honest, I thought that's where they were going, just to really stack that card. But after the complaints this week on social media about the card not being big enough for Collision this week, they've gone, well, okay, we'll put Danielson versus Starks 2, and we'll give you Andrade versus Jay White next week. You happy? Oh, and Rob Van Dam's back. You happy now? But it'd be a great match, and I'm really, really excited to see it. Just makes my job more fun because I get to review it then. A great promo. Really, really excited. Should be fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. I did think it was going to be at Wrestle Dream, and I would have liked it to be at Wrestle Dream too, but that card's stacking up nicely on its own, to be fair. Collision next week. A better card than this week for sure. But now let's talk about the main event. The main event was for the TBS Championship, Chris Statlander versus Britt Baker. And this match, if you hadn't watched Rampage, had like no story to it whatsoever. If you want to talk about a main event match, right, you've got to have a story behind it. Like I said at the start of this show, nobody's watching Rampage. Just not nobody, that's a lie. Very few of the Collision audience are watching Rampage. Even less are watching who watch Dynamite as well. But this was the match. Chris Statlander, Britt Baker, and the match was very good. It was a main event worthy match, no doubt about it. I wish there was more build for it. But Chris Statlander retained, meaning that in 24 hours, she defeated Jade Cargill and Britt Baker, two of the most dominant women's champions, right, with their respective belts in the history of the company. So they're high on Chris Statlander. They're clearly big fans of her TBS reign. The momentum's picking up a bit now. It's fun. I'm enjoying it. Julia Hart was there at the end. They're teasing a feud between them. I'm in on that as well. But come on, I think they could have built up Chris Statlander versus Britt Baker a bit better. Main event worthy, absolutely. I think they should have done this maybe in a couple of weeks. Build it up for a couple of weeks, then do it main event of Collision or Dynamite. And I'd love it, but it's whatever. Chris Statlander, they clearly seem to love. Bret, I'll pass it to you first. Give me your thoughts on this main event match on AEW Collision.
I think that like you said, there was zero build to this match. And I don't understand why there's such a backing on Chris Statlander. She's a great wrestler. I just don't like her gimmick, to be completely honest with you. First, she was an alien, and now she's a strong woman. I like it, but like I just wish she would embody more of like an Ultimate Warrior type of gimmick. But that's just me personally, because it's just very stale and bland at this moment in time right now. But last night was Britt's hometown. I believe that Britt should have took it home, and then maybe have like a back and forth type of situation with the title. But at the same time, I just think that Stat needs to talk to booking and actually get a storyline going, because this is getting bad again.
I mean, yeah, I can't help but agree with you on that one. They need to do something. They need to give her storylines. I think what they're trying to do is similar to what with Orange Cassidy, where they just, and not just Orange Cassidy, they've done it with tons of people. They did it with Darby early on in the company, where for the title, which isn't the world title, they just don't really do storyline matches. They do tons of, impromptu matches. But when you've got a star the level of Britt Baker, it's like doing John Moxley being TNT champion and facing Daniel Bryan with Bryan Danielson with no build, or a better comparison is maybe Miro with no build. And that's not even a fair comparison, again, because Britt Baker is the most over star in the women's division. It would be like John Moxley versus MJF for the TNT Championship with no build. That's what it would be like. It truly is ridiculous to me. I don't get it. David, am I overreacting?
No, I don't think so. The match was really good, by the way. I'll start with that because I think there's a major positives to be had. I think this is the best Brits looked in a while. I think Statlander, they're both two really, really good wrestlers. I love the sprint towards the end. I could have had longer with this match, to be honest. I think they could have, and again, a build would have helped that because it would have told us more of a story. But I do think that from an in-ring perspective, this was really, really, really fun stuff. And I very much enjoyed the last few sequences, particularly Britt's sequence, where she went through quite a few big moves one after another for Statlander to kick out. Really, really crisp stuff. I think when we look at Cassidy and Statlander, Cassidy seemed to have an ongoing theme through all of his matches, which was he was getting more tired, more injured, etc., which made each match feel more interesting. Statlander is a terrific wrestler and has had terrific matches in this run. The problem we really have is it feels a bit disjointed because there's nothing tying it together. It's just a series of good matches for good matches' sake, which is fine. You'll never complain about good matches for good matches' sake. But I could use a bit more. What I thought of literally while you were talking. So Orange Cassidy and Chris Statlander are technically both in Best Friends. Technically, they're both part of the same faction.
Yeah.
Why like a more interesting way to go for me than what they're doing with Cassidy now is really fun, the stuff with Hook. But what could have been interesting is if Cassidy tried to mentor Statlander through an open challenge TBS title reign, and kind of not getting in the way of Statlander in any means, but we're hearing more of him talk now to kind of be that kind of mentor figure to her, kind of giving her bits of advice through different weeks and things like that, how to deal with the mounting pressures, while at the same time kind of being depressed that he's not the one with the belt anymore. He's got to be a different kind of figure to somebody else who he can help. To give it that little bit of extra thing that can build through a couple of weeks. Now, the focus should still be on Statlander. I'm not saying take the focus from a women's main event over to a guy. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is give it something that can kind of a little bit of cohesive tissue that just keeps the story kind of going and have maybe Statlander improve in ways that maybe Cassidy didn't. And there's loads of stuff you could do, but just give it a backbone, something to really sink your teeth into, which right now there isn't. It is just some really good matches for some really good matches' sake, which is fine. Great main event, but I need a little bit more than that, I think, for two women of this caliber. But like Toni Storm with her amnesia gimmick, that feels like the book into the women's division. If you try and build something for more than 3 weeks, they give up. So it all seems really short-term stuff. But I digress. It was a really good main event.
I love your point about Orange Cassidy and Chris Statlander. Seeing them, together, him, as her mentor, but kind of depressed, similar to, very similar to Haymitch in Hunger Games, right? Where in that type of role, that could be quite fun about, obviously, taking the alcohol aside, but that type of character for Orange Cassidy would be very, very funny indeed. Because Statlander's a top star, but they just need to build some stories in this title reign. Bailey saying he doesn't like how Brit just hangs around title scenes. She could easily use her name value to elevate lower talents with storylines. I don't think that's her fault. I think it's the booking of her completely there. But I'll agree with it. Oh, this entire women's division, I don't like how it's booked, but at least they're getting more time and main event slots now. So slow steps, I guess, but it's still not really good enough. Shad, give me your take on this one.
So I'll go to the positives. Another main event for women's wrestling this week on both TV promotions with WWE and AEW. That's amazing to see. And Chris Statlander, I think it's just not, I don't know why it's not being flaunted as much, but in 24 hours, in theory, obviously it's been more than 24 hours because she wrestled on Wednesday night, but she beat the two most significant women wrestlers, characters in the AEW history. She beat Jade Cargill and then she beat Britt Baker. I feel like that needs to be, flaunted. It needs to be shown, and it needs to raise Chris Statlander to this next level, because that within itself is a major accomplishment, having two victories. The match itself, to David's point, I enjoyed it a lot. I think them two had great chemistry. I love the ending sequence with her getting the pin reversal off of the lockjaw. I thought that was great. And I think and this is what makes it difficult. I like that match so much where now I want to see them have a feud, but Britt is in another feud with Hikaru Shida. And I don't think this, to what you guys were saying, should have been a one-off. I think this could continue and eventually become a serious feud between both of them. But it goes to my point where I wanted to bring up, I don't think there's a reason for them to have two women's solo belts. I know initially this title was blatantly brought to build Jade Cargill as a dominant champ. Now we're at a point where there's not that much of an influx of women's wrestlers on the roster, nor enough time booked for it for them to have two titles. Because now we're going to a point where this is a mid-card title belt. What's defined as a mid-card women's wrestler and a main event women's wrestler, right? To me, Statlander is a main event women's wrestler. I think she's just as good as the people on the top of the food chain with a Shida, a Britt Baker, all of them. I think she has been there in a while. The fans love her. She's an incredible in-ring worker. Yeah, character-wise may not be the most appealing, but your character is appealing for what it's booked as, and they haven't booked her to that level. I feel that they had one belt and just kind of booked it around all the women's wrestlers that they do have. Maybe get a tag title. It would have made more sense. And then you have the ROH women's title too. So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You made some brilliant points there. There's a lot of championships, and that's a common theme around AEW right now. It's a common thing around wrestling right now. And who knows? Maybe that's something we could talk about tomorrow, because tomorrow is Mailbag Monday. So if you guys want to send in a question, some questions, maybe is there too many titles in AEW or WWE, whatever, and wrestling in general, send them in. The poll will be up on our Instagram story. We'll be back tomorrow. YouTube and X. Same time, same place. We'll answer your questions. Thank you to David. Thank you to Bret. And thank you to Shad for joining me here today. It's been a banger of a show, guys. Please like and subscribe on YouTube and give us a cheeky 5 stars on Spotify. We love you guys. And we will see you tomorrow. Peace.